Welcome back to Bruderhof's YouTube channel, where we're reading Call to Community, and we are at chapter 38.
38 out of 52.
We're doing really well.
We've stuck with it. It's amazing.
Yeah, and thank you for sticking with us on this journey. So chapter 38 is entitled Solitude. And just a brief overview, we have two excerpts from Henry Nouwen and Eberhard Arnold. And both of them kind of focus on the fact that solitude is very important to the formation and sustaining community. Nouwen talks about how it's the fertile ground for community, and that without it, community is kind of devolves into this place where there's fear and anger and tension. So carving out time to respond to the Holy Spirit in solitude and derive peace and healing and also personal prayer and study is essential for community. And then Eberhard talks about how we as humans, our power is not infinite, we are not almighty, and our strength and power is limited. So how we need this time, we need to create this time for our souls to breathe. And also Eberhard talks about how solitude is an important aspect to the rhythm of community life, and how the rhythm of life needs to not just be about interacting with each other, worship, play. It needs to also include this personal connection that everyone has to God and to their faith. That's what actually makes community work. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the personal connection to God is essential. We can't be dependent on sort of a corporate connection to God. And in the end, it's the individual's relationship to Jesus that's vital. And now it also points to this. Solitude is essential for community life because there, in solitude, we begin to discover a unity that is prior to all unifying actions. I think solitude is important because when we're alone and we're quiet, we silence our own actions, we silence our own thoughts, and we try to experience God in stillness. And it's really important, I think, for the believer, for believers, especially who are in fellowship together, to realize that there's, the most important piece, the most important relationship is that we have with God. Without that, our ship of community will founder very quickly. And then Eberhard Arnold's writing here, he speaks, as Doreen said, of the rhythm, the natural rhythm of wakefulness and sleep. We know with kids, it's important that kids have a set bedtime, right? At least most right-thinking parents believe that. Others may be a bit more loosey-goosey with it, but without a bedtime for kids, they'll stay up till who knows what hour and be completely useless the next day. And I think it's similar for adults, obviously with getting enough sleep, but also importantly with this discipline of being by oneself, taking quiet time to reflect, to pray, to read, and inwardly to be refueled in the same way that we're refueled, our bodies are refueled by sleeping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think just generally the overall understanding of the why you're living in community comes from solitude and that personal dependence that you find in solitude with God. And Eberhard also talks about how community doesn't work if you think that you're only giving. And also, conversely, doesn't work if you think you're only receiving and you're kind of useless or disposable. So if all the members of the body of believers are in touch with how they both serve and receive from other members of the community, and if we each live for each other and from each other, then that's the secret to life and community. So that goes along with the rhythm of the common life. And I thought that was a really neat thought.
And I don't think there's any really set way to go about this. I know there are some people in our community. A friend of mine, who's a couple years older than me, takes very seriously to have 2 hours of what he calls quiet time by himself, or he'll literally put in earplugs and just be in a quiet place. And that's just part of his practice. I mean,
Yeah, so my grandfather, he definitely devotes at least an hour of his day to reading the Bible in German. And he does that very faithfully. And that's always impressed me.
Other people, it might be taking a walk in the woods by themselves, or painting a picture, or listening to classical music, or something of that nature.
Or even splitting wood.
Splitting
alone.
wood, yeah. Some people find their quiet. Yeah, I know that there was one older member here who would get up at 5 every morning and split wood for an hour, and that was it was really important part of his day. But he was physically active, but then alone doing it. So there's many actually beautiful ways you can do it. It's just really essential that we not neglect it. And it is easy to be busy the whole time, or to feel. It can feel almost selfish sometimes to say, I need time for myself, but that's really not how you should look at it. You should look at it as like an essential. If you're not doing it, you're actually going to end up having a negative impact on the community. Eberhard here writes, we know we are weak people, and sin follows hard on the heels of overstrained nerves. And nerves get overstrained when they get used too much, whether it's in constant activity or constant talk, even things that are good, fellowship together. So rather than see it as like a selfish or a negative thing, we should see it as something we owe to our fellow community members to take time in quiet, and in that way we'll strengthen the bonds of community. Of course, interested in folks' thoughts, and we'll see you next week.